Hello, Principles of Accounting 2 students. This video is a quick overview of job order costing, which in your Holmgren's Financial and Managerial Accounting book should be Chapter 17. So job order costing, it's a pretty straightforward concept. Chapter 18 is going to cover process costing. We'll do a brief overview of that as well. Job order costing is how we determine the cost of manufacturing what we like to call unique or custom products. So I have here on this slide two very unique products, and they're from a movie, right? They're Death Stars, right? So hold on, yeah, we got here. This happens to be from the movie called Star Wars, and it's their original Death Star, and this is the Death Star moon from Saturn. Now, if you're a galactic empire and you're creating interstellar battle stations like this, these have very different features. And actually on this slide here, we kind of describe some of the Death Stars that the Galactic Empire, which is your typical non-government organization, has been trying to make over many years. Here's their original. Here's their prototype, which it's nice. Missing some key features here, relatively inexpensive to make. Here's the first one they made, and this is called Death Star 1. And if you look over here, here are all the features that this thing has. It has a surface cannon, proton torpedo banks, magnetic railguns, all these great little features. But each one of these is a very unique cost versus Death Star 2, which you may remember from Return of the Jedi. Twice the size, first off, of the first Death Star. Slightly different armament, lots of different features, it's got a new look. So the cost of the Galactic Empire for something like this is a lot different than building these. And every time they build one, the costs are different. Okay, that's fine, that's nice, I guess. Well, that matters when you're looking at price and profitability and whether or not you can account for the costs accurately. So what we do for something that's unique like this is something called job order costing, which is a simple way of saying we add up all the costs associated with this Death Star and we call it the cost associated with that Death Star. And we add up all the costs for this one and we call that the cost with that one. Other unique products that you may see in the real world, not just science fiction or fantasy, cruise ships are like that, right? You have different designs of cruise ships. Office buildings, right? You build 2 or 3 office buildings. They're all completely different. Even things like custom computers, where you have 2 computers. Yeah, the box looks very similar, but the software inside, the hardware features are different. Each computer has a slightly different manufacturing cost based on those features. Now we like to compare that to what we call homogeneous products, like milk, right? Homogenized, it's all smooth. These are products that you can make and the cost is identical. Stormtrooper helmets are a great example of this. Everyone, right? And Stormtroopers are clones, we all remember that. So every single Stormtrooper helmet is identical. It's the same size, same shape, it takes the same weight of raw materials, it takes the same amount of labor, it takes the same machine hours. So you could just make hundreds of these and each one will be within a penny or two of the other one. Easy to price. Now that's next chapter. We call that process costing, because how you accumulate costs for process costing is by products. So the molding, the making the eyes all messed up so that you can't shoot straight. All those things are what we call powder coating. Those are your processes, and we'll run a little video on that next week as you get into the process costing on how to account for those types of things. Back to job order. So here, yay, T accounts. We love T accounts, right? Here is how your T accounts work. Now remember, this is I'm going to try to write with a mouse. Hopefully I'm spelling this right, otherwise that would be embarrassing. Inventory. These are inventory accounts, work in process, finished goods. If you remember way back in the day, over here we're going to have raw materials. Right? We would have that over here. And of course, once we sell the goods, it would go to cost of goods sold for those of you that didn't have me for Principles 1. There we go. No, actually, you guys are fine. But right now, what we're focused on for this video is just these 2 inventory accounts. Now here's your prototype Death Star, your Death Star 1, your Death Star 2, and the big rock from the first slide. Now these are what we call jobs. Like Steve Jobs, right? Made Apple. Now these are different jobs. And so the technical term is costs are accumulated by job, right? That's a job, that's a job, that's a job. And clearly it's going to cost you more to make a big rock than it is a giant intergalactic battle station. So you wouldn't want to just average those costs. That wouldn't make sense. So as we're working on them, they're here. As we complete the jobs, they leave work in process, and they accumulate over here in finished goods. And we call that the cost of goods manufactured. Right? So all your costs for this job here, as it's finished, that's your cost of goods manufactured. Very important, right? You're looking at cost control. You care about cost of goods manufactured. Pricing, especially if you're in a cost plus or even target pricing, you're looking for cost of goods manufactured. So right here what we're seeing is that we have two finished Death Stars. Death Star 1, the big rock. Now all Empire has to do is sell them to some people, and that's when it will go over to cost of goods sold, but that's a different video, which may never get made. All right, so if you're building a Death Star, you may recognize these categories. In this class, we have 3 categories of costs for manufacturing, and here they are. So all your production costs are going to either be raw materials. Now these are your materials that are directly related to constructing the product that you can trace. Then you have direct labor. This could also be called direct materials, be another way of saying it. Direct labor is the same thing. It's people involved in the manufacturing process. Then you have all these other manufacturing costs that you have to allocate because they're a little bit squishier, right? It's hard to say, okay, I got project management, he's doing 5 projects, I've got to sort of tie a piece of his salary to each project. That sort of thing, or laser fluid, how many gallons per laser, I don't know, you average it. So anything that has to be, and the book calls these indirect materials and indirect labor, and then there's some other stuff like depreciation, that's going to be your overhead. Overhead is one of the harder concepts to grasp in this class, just because you're doing fractions and stuff, and that kinds of freak people out. All right, so here we go. We've got these raw materials here, right? We have blast doors. Those are those things that like Han Solo and Luke like to hide behind. Apparently they're laser proof. Then you have trash compactors. Those are those things that take the trash. Apparently Death Stars produce a lot of garbage. Stormtroopers are messy. So there's a lot of trash, and you need a lot of trash compactors. Bottomless pits, that's one of the pet peeves of the Empire. Emperor, he loves bottomless pits. Can't get enough of them. They're everywhere. They're right by his throne. People are falling into them all the time. They're cool as hell. So we have to buy a lot of bottomless pits. And of course, what's a battle station without giant lasers? So we have a bunch of those lasers, and then tractor beams to pull in rogue spaceships that are flying by so that you can catch them and interrogate them and do those good things. So that's your, there's going to be other raw materials like, stainless steel, those sorts of things, to build the girders, but let's just keep it relatively simple and pretend that you can make an entire space station based on these raw materials. Now here's your direct labor, right? These things, of course it's the Empire, and so your direct labor is going to be stormtrooper hours. They're out there, they're building the thing. We got to pay them a decent wage, they're union, all that good stuff. And then of course like your laser fluid to make the lasers go, and your project management, depreciation on these things. These things usually depreciate rapidly because they tend to kind of get destroyed rapidly, and supervisors' salaries. All right, so we accumulate costs on this scary thing called a job cost record. Really easy to do. So we have 3 categories here. So the cost of your direct materials, believe it or not, are going to go here. I see. And then we have the cost of your direct labor. It's going to go there. And then your overhead's going to go here. Now you notice there's all this room in the overhead, And we'll get into that at the end, and I'm going to draw a little something or other. Is that a flower? I don't know what that is. Oh, that looks like there's an eye. That's Walrus Man from Star Wars, isn't it? Dun, 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 dun. I'll erase that quickly because that was terrible. Okay. All right. So job number is going to be how the company tracks the number. And we'll get into, that shows up on a sheet, job 1, job 100, whatever it is. And that's how in the information system, that information is going to be in there. The customer is going to be your end customer. Your job description talks about what this is. That's going to say something like Death Star, right? Yeah. Anyway, okay. I need to stop playing with that thing. And then down here is your summaries, right? You got your direct materials, your direct labor, your manufacturing overhead, and all that is a summary of each of these columns. You got your total cost here. Now your unit cost in this example sort of breaks down because we're only building 1 Death Star for this job. If this job involved doing 10 Death Stars, we'd take the total cost, let's say it was $10, divide it by 10, and it would cost us $1 per Death Star, which would be a really strong intergalactic dollar. But that's... Okay, next up, we have this form called a materials requisition form. Now, luckily in this class, you don't have to fill these out. These come to you, right? So somebody hands this to you, and what this is saying is, we would like to move some materials out of inventory and start putting them into work in process. So here's, 14 means it's the 14th in order, right? Which is nice because, hey, who ordered this? Well, it's on materials requisition number 14, so it's just a tracking number. Here's the date, which, yes, that was a long time ago. Here's your job number. Oh, your job number, you know what that ties to? I'll show you in a sec. It ties to this job number here. Okay. And then, here's the person requesting it. So you could always go back to Darth Vader and say, hey, yo, Darth, you requested this stuff. What do I want? What's going on, Darth? And that's kind of what's going on here. All right, so here are the items that they requested for raw materials. Now remember, this is only raw materials. So they have, here's a description. Okay, we got those. Here's how many they want. They want lots of doors for this one. 50 bottomless pits, a couple trash compactors, 1 giant laser, one tractor beam. They're probably early in the production process at this point. Here's how much this costs, right? So 1 giant laser costs $1 million. 1 blast door costs $600, right? But they want 3,000 of them, so then here's your total cost. You get that by multiplying your quantity times your unit cost. Sometimes you're going to see a total down here. Sometimes you have to total it yourself. Okay. So using this, what I'm going to do, I think, is, okay, so here's your job cost record. Okay. I went ahead and I went all crazy and I put this in Excel. Now I just got to focus it so that I believe that is viewable for you guys. Maybe I'll make it a little bit smaller. There we go. Now it's all viewable. All right, so what do I say? I say my job number here, right? So this is for the entire job, is 775. And so all costs tracked to job 775 are going to go there. Who's my customer? Well, I just happen to know it's the Galactic Empire. Happens to be the customer. And the job description is going to be a giant, that pretty much covers it, right? Okay, we're making this giant space station. And I come down here because I have a materials requisition form. And the date's going to be 5/25/1977. My requisition number is, oh, look at that. I think that was, let's go back here real quick. It was 14. I can cheat a little bit. Okay, so here, my requisition number is 14. And the amount is going to be, all I got to do is sum up this total cost column. $3 million. Okay, so I am done with that, and so far so good. Okay. We'll get to this one in a second. Next. Oh, and there it is, and that's what it looks like. Perfect. And a little slightly different name here, Large Spherical Space Station. Ultimate Weapon. Now, a couple hours go by, maybe a couple months go by, they're working on this thing. It's kind of a long project. They have to build a planet that looks, it's basically a battle station. It's not a moon, it's a battle station. And so another materials requisition comes in, and that's not uncommon. You can get lots of these as they need more materials. And again, they're getting more blast doors, another 4,000, more trash compactors, a couple bottomless pits. Now they're getting a little bit more lasers and tractor beams. You're going to see that a lot during a production process too. Right? I mean, generally you put a laser and a tractor beam in last, and you put more structural stuff in first. So it looks like they're getting closer to being finished. So then let's go back to our materials requisition, which looks familiar and looks like I already filled this one out. Sorry. Here's your date, 6/1/1977. Requisition number 15, which is right there. And the amount is just going to be adding these up. And yep, 5505. All right, still done. Yes. Okay. And it should look like this. And so our job cost record is, current with the cost that we have. Next thing we got to record is labor. Right? And so we have, Darth Vader supervising all these stormtroopers. And sure enough, here's the name of your employees, right? And this should be, and if there weren't clones, they'd have unique names. But there's your employee name. You might see employee number, and it'd be an easier way to identify them possibly. Now they're union guys, so they're working 2 40-hour shifts, so we know they've all worked 80-hour weeks. The stormtrooper worked 80, the stormtrooper worked at 80. The Empire, as you know, is very tight-fisted and will not let people work overtime. So that really helps a lot. If there's some overtime in here, there'd just be some more columns with time and a half. Here's their rate. Now their rate is, it's minimum wage in the Galactic Empire in the 1970s. They all make $3.35 an hour, and so we're paying them all $268. So then we could go back to here, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually shrink that. I'm going to say the date is 5/30, end of the month. It looks like they're probably getting paid from this information, possibly monthly, possibly every other week. Who knows? Labor time record numbers from right here, 32. And all that means is there are 31 other record numbers. And the amount is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's going to be 268 times 7, 1876. And I'm going to do that right there. And that's it. I should be done with that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I just want to make sure there's 7. There's 7. Okay. And sure enough, it looks like that. So again, we're filling this out. We're just knocking it down. Oh, okay. Well, hold on. Middle of June, we get another one. Same job number, 775. There's a supervisor, signed it. And it looks like it's another bunch of stormtroopers, all worked 80 hours. Really easy company to do time for because everybody makes about the same amount. And so we can come in here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, it should be identical. Right? So on June 15th, right? It was the 15th, I hope it was. And it's number 33, and it was 1876. I'm gonna go ahead and make that. I'm gonna get rid of some decimal points here. All right, and so then your completed labor, hey, should look like that. So far, so good. Over here, I just put in some timesheets. Same thing you have on the slide. Okay, look at that. Boom, boom. Totally done. Now overhead gets a little squishy. It's not as fun graphically. So how the Empire and every organization gets to determine how they want to allocate their own overhead, but the Galactic Empire here in Star Wars decided to allocate overhead based on Stormtrooper direct labor hours. All right, fair enough, they can do that. And remember, now with overhead, and I'm sure you got this in the textbook, you have to estimate it, right? We don't know what actual overhead's going to be till the end of the period, so we have to kind of come up with a predetermined rate so that we can get the costs sort of similar. So if they're expecting manufacturing overhead, so their estimates, you say, we're going to have about $10 million, or space dollars, in overhead for the for the entire year, and that's for all our projects. We're doing all these space stations, we're doing battle cruisers, we're, Imperial troop transporters, we got AT-ATs, we got walkers, we got, snow speeders, we got all kinds of crazy projects that we're doing. And we really think the overhead for that is going to be about 10 million, and we think the stormtroopers are going to work 5,000 hours. So, all right, you take the $10 million total overhead here, divide it by the hours, and what we're saying is every hour that a stormtrooper works, about $2,000 of overhead is going to get allocated. All right, that's kind of reasonable. So then we look at our timesheets, and we had 2 timesheets. Looks like we had on the Death Star 160 hours that stormtroopers worked in direct labor throughout the year for this job. All right, well, 160 hours times $2,000 per hour means that we have $320,000 of overhead that's been applied to the first Death Star. That's always a little bit hard to get your hands around, so feel free to rewind that a little bit and stare at it. All right, so when am I going to do that? What would be a good date for that? Did I even say? No? I'm going to cheat and see. Oh, June 30th. Okay. Just wanted to be consistent. So on June 30th, we know the rate is $2,000 per storm hour, right? So that's, and I can come over here and I can format my cell and wrap text. Yay. Okay. So every hour that the stormtrooper works, we're allocating $2,000, and that's going to be $360,000. I think we calculated on this slide here. I said on this slide here. Okay, there we go. Or 320,000. My bad. Yeah, bad memory. Getting old. Old enough to remember Star Wars. Okay, and there's a trash compactor, by the way. So here's your complete job cost record. Well, it's not quite complete now, is it? We have to summarize it. So, piece of cake. How do we summarize this thing? What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a couple things here. For direct materials, I am going to add the direct materials. And if you're doing this on a piece of paper, you have to do that with a calculator. Or you can just add it up yourself, actually. You don't need calculators. Calculators are optional in life. And then you just totally mess up your Excel sheet. All right, equals sum. There we go. And then your manufacturing overhead's going to be this number here. All right, so all we're doing really is summing columns. Your total costs are going to be your materials plus your labor plus your overhead. And good luck figuring out why that's not centered. There we go. Okay. And then your unit costs, we take that and we divide it by the number of Death Stars produced on this job. Again, if we're talking PCs, that might be for 1 million computers, but really we're doing this with 1 Death Star, so piece of cake. And then your job cost record looks like this, and that becomes your cost of goods manufactured for job number 775. So just a little over $9 million to create that first Death Star. Now your second Death Star would be a little bit more expensive, probably maybe twice the costs. They did approve overtime for the second Death Star, just because they wanted to get it done. They had a big surprise party for the rebels, and they wanted to make sure it was fully functional. But don't worry, because it really all worked out for the good guys. That concludes today's video. I hope you all have a great week, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.